radical acceptance as part of my personal philosophy. Okay, this is the way it is, kind of thing. But I think that in the echo of all the arguing going on about all kinds of things, I'm trying to zero in on solvable things that we could be learning about and do something about. And that's kind of where my focus is at. And primarily I followed, during the political season, I followed the campaign of Andrew Yang, who was for the universal basic income. And if you talk to me for 5 minutes, I'll tell you all about it, to anybody. So that's kind of what I've been following what happened subsequent to him ending his political campaign. And I'd like to share that with people.
That sounds great. Okay, well, I would like you to get your desires done first. So, which one of you wants to go first? Raise your hand. Who wants to go first?
Let Karen go first. I want to hear about Andrew Yang and universal income.
Okay, Karen.
Okay, so all right. So I know, Janet, you've had a area of discussion called planetary solutions, and that's kind of what is involved in, okay, we have all these issues, but what is some unifying principles pretty much based on our shared humanity, There's a lot of general polarization, but it's actually very fractured time right now. And what we need to do is recognize intrinsic human worth in a way that maybe we haven't before in society. And then because I was a caregiver for many years, I'm focusing on intrinsic human work. So the work that's done when a caretaker kind of person takes care of their family or other things is a life situation for me. I went through that kinds of issues for years. In fact, I took care of 8 family members at various stages of disability and end of life. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, one of the people I helped is no longer with us. So not from COVID. You have to say that, but they didn't have COVID. Okay, but so I found out about the basic income kind of in the middle when I was working with you and a lot of things related to paranormal. And I like to look at the edges of things, because now I've got to say, well, why were you into paranormal? Well, to people who aren't, that I now work with. And I just say, it's because I like to look at the edges of things. If you look at the middle, it just seems like it's a constant argument in a sort of polarity way. So I call it the, polarity dancing, right? Polarity dancing. Mm-hmm. And that is just not, to me, going anywhere because of the fact that it really is arguing about abstraction, my philosophy versus your philosophy or ideas. And we're not there anymore. That's not the arena of where things are. We are at survival mode. We have millions of people who've lost their jobs, lost their health insurance with their jobs, and about ready to lose their homes. I mean, it's yes, there's a pandemic going on, but it's definitely bringing out the vulnerability that we had in the system already. It's like you do a car and you crash it into a wall and you want to see how well the crash dummy came out. Yeah, that's where we're at. We've taken our ideas of how to run things, and we are being put to a stress test, and with varying results, depending on how on the ball a particular group of people were when it came to taking care of their people and making sure they weren't vulnerable or as vulnerable or responding in a humane kind of way. So we are, in my opinion, really in it's like the the Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. We are on the one hand having extreme challenge and very visceral, very real, very up in your grill kind of daily battles of trying to figure out what to do and how to stay safe and how to stay solvent financially. But a crisis is both in the Chinese character for that is that it's danger and opportunity. So what's the opportunity? And that's what I'm trying to apply my efforts now that I'm kind of feeling a lot better. By the way, I'm doing a lot better. I'm still going to be disabled for life, but I'm not going to be as bad off as I was. And for me, the healthcare system worked for a change. So I'm glad for that. And now it's like I just feel like that's really what I want to focus on. And I learned about the basic income before Andrew Yang kind of came on the scene. And the more I got into it, the more I go, oh, hey, wait a minute. Here's a fundamental way of looking at things and making sure everyone's taken care of. And then Andrew Yang is a tech guy, and so he saw the basic income because he talks to all the tech guys, all the tech gurus, who almost all of them have said we're going to need some kind of basic income because they know what is in their laboratory, what they're working on. That will it's going to cause technological unemployment, and we're about ready to have it on steroids because of the fact that in order to recover from this virus, we need to throw everything at it that will keep the supply lines in factories and everything safe, and people aren't safe. We don't have the mechanisms yet with testing and all those things to make sure that when you're using people labor or whatever, that it's not a risk, or to them mostly. And so this is going to accelerate the use of technology. And the antiquated technology that we're in trouble with, besides not applying ourselves in the area of healthcare, is our money system. It is not created. Sometimes I look around and I go, what's an economy for? Is it just for Jeff Bezos to get more money, or is it we do all this effort as a group? How come we don't benefit from that when we really, really need it? And so Andrew Yang ran for president. He was able to kind of get the idea of a basic income that he called a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month to every adult over the age of 18, and then some kind of stipend for when you have a kid. And he at least kind of got people talking about it and what's that and what's that about. Now, he ended his campaign, kind of going through the machine of politics, and his organization, he really galvanized a lot of people who got very excited about this idea. And now they've created Humanity Forward. So one of the things, and I know the guy who made it up, his name's Scott Santens, he's kind of a philosopher of basic income. He said, the basic income is not left or right, it's forward. And that's where that came from. Because it really, there's economic philosophers on the left and the right and all over the place who do see that deciding that every human should be taken care of no matter what, would be a principle of shoring up our society. It would be stabilizing.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question?
I'll just talk until you did.
Okay, so we're allowed to interrupt you, but we'll do it politely.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so the left or right, not left or right, but forward. However, our society tends to be philosophically left or right, and the right thinks that the left is lazy. They'll do anything to not have to work. That we don't want to pay the $600 a week additional unemployment, which is what's keeping our economy afloat, because that's not an incentive for them to go back, people to go back to work. So everything is about the top, looking their noses down at the bottom, and eliminating the middle class. And it's like a shame-blame society. You're lazy. You're not a good person. You didn't achieve, security and retirement because you didn't do life right. You didn't do it right. That's what I get from my relatives. Well, you're in this situation because you didn't do it right. Look at me. I did it right. I have, I worked for so-and-so, and now I have a pension the rest of my life. So anyway, so what do you do when you have this type of trickle-down economics that started with Reagan that no longer works, but our government's still operating from that perspective? And we've been looking at the stimulus check argument, and they're still back in the 80s with, you people are lazy, let's get people off of, now the new welfare is the stimulus checks, which are kind of resembling, the basic needs or minimum income, which Yang introduced to us. I think we're talking stimulus checks because of Yang's work, and I really want to applaud him. But we've got these people that are just, they don't want to give us money no matter what, and they don't care if we die, starve, whatever. There's no rational argument, and even trying to appeal to them that this is going to boost your economy, and you're not going to be rich. You're not Bezos. You're not going to get your billions that you're getting now, instead of the millions every day. But I think he gets something $1 billion a day. So I'll put it back to you. I set it up. What do you think about
that was good. That was a lot of different arguments there, and you hear that, and so the situation here is the reason why they say not left but not right but forward. It helps to be a history geek like I am, because you go back into the economic development of the country where the idea of a basic income goes all the way back to Thomas Paine, one of the founding writers of our country. And he he had these famous pamphlets that he wrote, and one was called Agrarian Justice. And it was the idea that we need to compensate people in order to go back to that era. And you want to live. If you get a little bit of land and a chicken and a cow and whatever, and that goes resources available to you to survive and live off the land. If you start making a complex society that needs a butcher, baker, and candlestick maker, then that person has got to stop taking care of themselves and their family so much, and they need to, you want to make sure people are compensated in such a way that they can participate in your society. And so that's kind of, I'm not getting that completely right, but that's kind of the gist. We have a very complex society to where now we can't, obviously not very many of us are farmers and whatnot. So how do we proceed with making society and making sure everybody's okay? And that, that is been the big debate. Now, so you said the left, I think you meant the right as far as arguing about. So when you say, "Hey,
sorry.
If you stick, I know you're fine. If you stick your neck out and say, "Hey, I'm for a basic income," you were talking about sort of the knee-jerk reaction to the concept from the right-wing perspective. But there is some issues from the left, and I happen to. So my personal history. I grew up in a right-wing religious environment, so that's and it was cult. So you only heard what their people and their leaders were telling you, and so this would be the kinds of things of self-sufficiency, and you don't need the government, and blah 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 blah, philosophy that goes on. And then as I lived my life and went through various challenges, I kind of realized, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So, I've always been, I didn't want to be locked in a party because I feel very frustrated. And there's a lot of independents. Independents swing the election right now because they're kind of sitting back going, nothing's making sense to me right now. And a lot of times we attribute to people, going down a wrong path of thinking. And that happens to me. I think we should allow people to have a fluidity as they learn, and definitely not be hostile to one another. And we have a proposition idea for the economics on the left. Let's go with the right. It's usually coming from that kind of concept of self-sufficiency, which I think is is problematic because there's a lot of assumptions being made about how things are versus how things are. There's a lot of principles that are just ideas and principles. In a church, they would call that doctrine, and it's just taken for granted. And it kind of, what I found, it oversimplifies the situation. On the left-hand side, I'm going to get eggs thrown at me from both sides now, so I'll just go there. On the sort of left perspective, they're very much into being a group of collective people that rally around taking care of people, good goal, but they tend to create complex, big systems to do it, okay? So to just kind of share where the basic income fits in there, this is taking the money that's produced or the wealth that's produced of the country and making it a shared resource because we are all contributing. The biggest gripe I have in terms of talking to people from the perspective of the right has to do with the fact that they think that their idea of capitalism works, and it doesn't. And part of it is it's not what they sell. They sell that it's full capitalism, free market capitalism. We don't have that. We probably never have had that. We definitely don't have that after Ronald Reagan. And I've had this weird set of experiences where, because I was in this religious group, I went to one of the colleges, and I was literally in the second row listening to a lecture by the chief economist of Ronald Reagan, the one who came up with supply-side economics, which is now infiltrated into every aspect of policy coming from the right perspective. And Milton Friedman was an interesting guy. He was a very short man. He actually had to stand up on a box to speak because they built a podium for the president of the college, and but he was talking about supply-side economics. This was his theory as opposed to other theories of economics. Now, here's how that works. He was talking about, let's make sure that we remove barriers from the job-creating corporations, okay, and business, so that they can function and the free market will take care of everything and it'll give us jobs. They call them job creators that way. But the other half of his plan was that you have kind of something like a basic income. He called it a negative income tax. And it was a recognition that workers are always kind of in a precarious mode of having to be ready to be market worthy to the jobs that are going to be created. And so he said, if your income drops below a certain level, below the poverty line, let's say, then you would get a tax refund that equaled the amount of, getting you up to the poverty line at least. Well, when they implemented supply-side economics, it was called voodoo economics at the time. Some people, you have to be old to remember that, I think.
I remember that. Yes, you're talking about it. You're refreshing my memory. I forgot about it.
Yeah. So I happen to, I have kind of writ large that experience because I heard what the guy said and then subsequently watched what happened was they didn't implement the negative income tax. So that meant, and then we went through unprecedented changes in the jobs market where you had to retrain for school, for skills every couple of years and rack up student debt and blah, 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 in order to make yourself ready to be the cog in that machine, so to speak, with no compensation. There was no help for that. That would have helped people, in transitional life situations, which are normal parts of everybody's life. If you have a period of time where it's a little bit, you're kind of struggling, it would have reduced the struggling. Now, literally on the same era, on the left was Martin Luther King, whose last book suggested that there be a basic income guarantee. It is not a new idea. It was talked about by Thomas Paine. It was almost implemented in the Nixon era. It's been around. And he said that to say have a basic income so that you don't start from zero. Because if you start from zero, you can go to negative real quick. You could become so destabilized that you can't quite participate in the society that's based on money, which is a problem altogether. So fast forward to now. Fast forward to now is we have had enormous changes all the way through that we've all struggled with to try to adapt. And then now you throw in some natural disasters and you throw in COVID. COVID is like this huge disruptor, you know. And the tech company, what we can do versus 100 years ago when they had the Spanish flu, in terms of the medical aspect, is we can throw some technology and some tools to the problem if we so choose to do so. And the machine began to run on supply side economic kind of presumptions, but it left the people kind of struggling, and there's a word for that. The word is called precariat. It's the people who are precarious. They can't ever quite get their footing. They can't ever quite get ahead. And the machine has produced, so what comes out the other end of that factory is wealth inequality. We have rewarded and or given or supported corporate welfare. And then when the 2000, now I really slipped financially, and it's not easy to admit you're poor because our country shames that. I am going to be not being shamed or silenced because I've struggled. And the biggest struggle I had was as a caregiver for my daughter and became a single parent, and it was on. And so what's happened is all the gains from us applying technology and getting smarter in terms of how we do things have gone to the corporations, and they get, money. They're right by the spigot where the money comes out, right? And they get supported first, but everyone else has to try to play catch up with less resources. So that was a big thing that happened in 2008. We're still living under the shock and awe of that situation, and we had not really recovered because most people are not doing all that well, or they're hanging in by a thread, or they're deep in debt, right? There's all kinds of life circumstances you're trying to deal with. And then they put the downfall. Let me finish this, and I will. They put the downfall when they bail out. It's complicated, and I apologize. When they bail out the banks and when they bail out the corporations, they put the risk that's supposed to be part of capitalism, and they put it on the people. So they get the benefit, we get the risk. This is where we are right at the moment.
Right. So yesterday I was on a show with Dr. Lessin. We were looking at the system going all the way back to the Anunnaki. And what dawned on me while we were discussing it, I was listening to Dr. Lessin's presentation. I hope to have that and put that on our site sometime in the next few days. But that one of the factors for this economic or wealth inequality, systemic racism, which is part of divide and conquer, which also includes the corporate economic slavery of the human race. It's like 99% of the human race are just corporate economic slaves. But they periodically use war accompanied by pandemics. So the Spanish flu was put out at the same time as the World War I, right? And so that was a big control mechanism. It lowered the population down to like 20 million or something like that. A third of the planet was sick, so if you didn't die from the initial plague, you got sick, and you were dealing with the repercussions of having been ill. I have a friend that died recently of COVID, but it was cumulative. So he had caught an earlier flu, and so when COVID got him, he was dead like instantly. He was dead in a week, right? Because he was already with a pre-existing condition, and then they tend to blame the victim. You have this pre-existing condition, but these diseases and the improper food and the pollution and everything in the atmosphere is all part of this depopulation bomb to keep our human race always scrambling, never can figure it out, never can catch up, never can even become equal. Well, there's no chance that, I guess who was that? There's one person with a story of being a billionaire. He wasn't a billionaire. I mean, everyone's probably, but those people sell their souls, they usually have to do something horrendous like kill babies or something at Bohemian Grove. So I just want to, I guess we got off course, but this basic minimum BMI was going to just bring us up from the bottom, right? There would be no bottom then. There would be $1,000 would be the bottom for every man and woman, and I guess a child would get $500 or something. Did Andrew address children? He said he addressed it, but children.
He does because he has two kids, and one of his kids, Christopher, is autistic, and so Mom, he was on the campaign trail, Mom's at home dealing with that very challenging set of circumstances, and I totally commiserate because my daughter was born with spina bifida and other things, and so that's one of the areas of real serious precarious stuff is we have people doing the work. Like, I keep thinking of how many parents who had been working who are now home because the kids can't go to school, and I know what it's like because I did work from home as a parent with a handicapped kid and kept her home for a lot of the reasons why people are keeping their kids home now. And so, we have these, I call them poverty traps, things that people get caught into because the structural problem, so you talked earlier about, you didn't do it right, kind of thing, is one of the sort of like mind control, very vicious ways that people dismiss other people and their circumstances. And if you really get into how people got there, yes, there are people who did it to themselves, yes, but probably because they were not okay mentally or emotionally, probably needed some help before they went off to be an addict or something. I get that. But most of the time, we just have shitty choices. Like, how can you make good choices if your options are not that great? So I got part of a degree, and I had to stop because I got sick, and I never got back to it. And I thought about it, man. I really thought about, do I want to have debt when this would be the 2008 era? Do I want to be, in my 50s, over my head with debt just to finish that goal? And I painfully chose to not continue my studies, and now I'm finding out so many people are carrying. I don't think. I think that should be forgiven because it was a setup financially for people.
Right.
But my God,
right.
Every single healthcare professional, please, it's expensive to become a healthcare professional, and then they stick you out on the front line. I think just there's a lot of things we need to recognize past just making sure people don't fall all the way down the tubes. And I call it going down and out. If you don't put a floor to poverty, people go all the way down and out. And it's very, very difficult to climb back up. And,
right.
The dynamism of the system, I think something I would say, and I always appreciate the kind of nod to the Anunnaki situation, is it does feel like there's sort of an intentional system, invisible system underlying this, that it's not incompetence that causes our government to be the way it is or our ruling class to be the way they are. It's quite intentional for us to be in these, and that emotionally is very difficult to come to terms with and then try to figure out. So here's the deal. We just got to say no. There's more of us than them. It might just only be an emotional, no, I'm sorry, I don't accept these terms. You might not be able to say it to them directly, but because, who can talk to the real faces behind everything that's going on? But I think we are saying no. I think energetically we're saying no because it always surprises me that so many people do see this stuff. Like, if we were totally in a program situation with television, you go back to your regular programming, right? Then, how do we see this that fascinates me right there and gives me a lot of hope. How do people recognize? It might be all over the map, but I like that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's pause right there. Good question. Let's talk to Debra, because she's probably over there raising her hand, and I can't see her, but I can feel her. Debra, questions, comments?
No.
Wealth of information.
Well, let me just say this. Well, I have a comment, right?
Sure.
Being someone who was unemployed when COVID hit, and my unemployment benefits had just run out, and I'm facing age discrimination in my industry, so my chances of going back to work pre-COVID were very slim, and I had 2 job offers right before it hit, and then I lost them. And now my chances of ever going back to work within the next 2 years are probably less than 2%. So the money that the government, I'm a perfect example that the universal income worked. I got my unemployment money plus the stimulus money, and all of it had run out. And I had saved knowing that this situation was going to occur. And I've got money to tide me over for a couple of years, but that money will eventually run out. So what happened with the money that was given through, what was it called, the CARES Act or PUC, or I'm not sure what it was relative to unemployment, it was a lifeline for me. It made all the difference in my life. Like, it literally kept me from going over the financial edge.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually helped my situation. So I'm now getting enough money where I haven't had to go into my savings whatsoever, and it's bought me more time to figure this out, right? And I think that's what a lot of people in my situation are doing, and what universal income does is it buys you time, right, to figure this out without it devastating your life, right? And it's supposed to be a foundation, not something you survive on, right? And I think that's the part that the right wing gets wrong, right? That, these people all get $1,000 a month and they're just going to sit on their butts and not do nothing. And that's not it, right? It gives people options that weren't even possible, right, before that happened. And I'm going to give you an example of something that happened. I was working in a sewing factory in the Dominican Republic, and I was down there, and I didn't speak the language, and they assigned someone who was basically like a janitor or a maid in the offices to take care of me and make sure I always had something to drink or eat or whatever, and she didn't speak a lick of English. And I was there for a week, and she made my stay so pleasant. And at the end of it, I took, I think it was like $60, right? And that was probably 3 months' salary for her. And I put it in a card and thanked her. And she was so emotional when she saw that money, and that money probably made a difference, like made some kind of dream come true that probably never could have ever occurred. And that was $60, and I piss away $60, right? So that moment made a difference in someone else's life who never would have had an opportunity at that kind of money ever.
Mhm.
And I'm passing the baton. Sorry.
Back to you, Karen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's such a good example, because one of the statements that goes, and part of why I'm really attracted right now to today's Game Time movement, because it makes statements that make sense in our current situation, and it talks about those kinds of things. And they say poverty is not a lack of character, it's a lack of money. We have a monetary system. We can debate whether that's a good idea or not, but we currently have that. You can do a lot in terms of self-sufficiency, but at some point you've got to pay rent, you've got to pay utilities. That has to be paid in money. And this is where, now I'm going to piss off the left, so here we go. On the left side of the argument, they want to take care of people. That is a good thing. It's just like, in a sense, self-sufficiency is a good idea. But what happens is our response to poverty we've kludged together benefits programs, and all those benefits programs, probably because of the right wing too, want to make sure you deserve it or not. It's called means testing. Are you deserving poor or are you poor? And so this is how it works. Let's say you have a program to provide, housing for a group of people. The department or the organization with the government, or even in either side, if it's like a charity type thing or if it's a governmental program, they raise the funds, it gets this block grant of cash, and then this is what happens to it. The first thing that happens is you pay the exec. The next thing that happens is you pay all the employees their salaries and benefits. The next thing that happens is you got to pay for a physical plant, which may be questionable right now just because of COVID, but you have to pay for the building and the chairs and the lights and the paper and the staples and the file cabinet and everything. Then some part of that money has to be gone back into fundraising efforts. So you've got to have events, you've got to advertise, whatever. Now, after you've done all that paying out, right, you have a little fraction of it left, so pennies on the dollar, whatever that is. And you can actually find out if organizations in your state what that pennies on the dollar kind of thing is in some states through the state attorney general's office. And you can find out if most of the money has been going to their client population or just a fraction or at all, So then when you start to deal with the clients, you're now very limited. You've got less money than you had to start with. So you've got to put some kind of vetting process over the people to make sure they deserve the resource or not. So means testing is, are you bringing in any money? Do you have anything in your bank account, et cetera? Do you have a job? That said, that kind of thing. And it just becomes elaborate to run, an obstacle course for people to run. They got to get this paper at that time and have that meeting. If you drop the ball at any stage of it, which is easy to do, then you got to start over, or you don't get that resource. And so that's unfortunately what people are defending. And what's happened is that somehow Andrew Yang has gotten through enough talking about this to some part of the Democratic Party that they're proposing this. They're saying, hey, let's just give people money, and you cut it. You can have all the money that you were allocating go straight as a cash payment to individuals. Now the resistance is coming
their
from...
job, let me just interject, their job would be suspended. Their job is suspended because there's no top of the pyramid unless you have the bottom spending. And if you deplete the money that the person has to go beyond, just basic needs, nobody's buying, coffee mugs or, dishwashers, right? Because now we're in survival mode and we're only going to buy food. And maybe we get one pair. I used to get one pair of shoes a year when I was a kid. If I wore out my shoes before the school year was over, too bad, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of sad. But so now we're back to that mode where we're in base shock or survival, and there's really no disposable income. There's nothing more than survival mode. That's not sufficient to fuel this current American society. So these people that are arguing like you were just describing are shooting themselves in the foot. We have to have our needs met, because once our needs are met, then we can go and we're going to want luxuries. We're going to want that iPhone instead of just the old flip phone, right? We're going to want the fancy car. We're going to want the vacation. So that's what made our economy what it is today, not just meeting needs, but because people are, it's all consumerism. So our job is to consume, and that's how Jeff Bezos and all those other ultra uber rich get rich, not on a survival mode system, but on a one that's thriving. So back to you. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry I interrupted, but I just wanted to add that before I forgot.
No, feel free.
Their job would be to consume. So it's not that they're lazy, that they do have to spend it. So I guess part of the stimulus concern is that people are just going to take that money and put it in the bank. But, we have a fear-based society right now. We're putting it in the bank because we don't know when we're going to get money again, right? They were talking about cutting off the $600 extra unemployment, or lower it down to 100. So people are insecure. So when they do get like a stimulus check, they put in the bank. But some of them, by the time they get it, that's all they have left to live on. So there's a certain percentage that they're so destitute. It's like, well, now I've got to go pay the rent. But then they also put a hold on rent. So, people who are mom and pop that have rentals, it was just tucky, shitsky. You're not getting your rent, but the renters were like not having to pay for it. They're not really thinking this through on all levels. It's like, wait. So I'm going to put the talking stick back to you, Karen, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And if you want to talk about, when I was in that, religious school, it was very conservative. I went through micro and macroeconomics. And macroeconomics is talking about the economics as a whole. And you do the supply side thing, but you don't do anything to protect and support the demand side. I mean, talk about economics one-on-one, supply and demand. Okay, so an example of that was when a gentleman who worked in one of the auto industry plants in the United States went to Japan, back in the day when they started implementing robots to build, riveting all the rivets and all that. He politely went through the whole tour, and this is going to be great. You can put these in your plant too. And he gets to the end of the tour, and he goes, okay, so we're going to put these robots in, and we're going to fire a bunch of people, and are the robots going to have enough money to buy a car? I mean, it was pretty to the point. And that, that's the thing is you've got to support and protect the demand side. If we're just on rations, if we're just on limited, almost like 80 to 90% of the jobs live in the discretionary income, okay? Because by the time you pay for your rent, that's however you do that, by the time that you pay for your utilities, and that's the government, by the time you get food, and that's probably Walmart or Amazon right now, whatever is left, that's where somebody's job is. If you decide to get a pair of jeans, or you want to get a pot for making to put your plant. Well, there's several kinds of pot right there, but I mean to put your plants in. We'll go with that. I won't say what kind. But anything else you do, is somebody has to vend that to you. Okay. Now what's going on right now is that whole way of doing things is Etch-a-Sketch. It is, I don't think it's, when you're in a crisis, you tend to keep doing whatever it is that you're going to be doing, but we can't, okay? What the basic income would do, they're talking about doing a temporary one, okay? By the way, another aspect of this COVID thing is it's disrupting the health. So you try to call to get your unemployment. You didn't apply. You try to get, grocery money help or food stamps or something. All of those offices are afflicted with people not being able to work there for safety reasons, and they haven't quite finished up all the shoring that up. And they just dumped a crap ton of money, and it's stuck there because it's not getting. I mean, it's getting to somebody, but it's definitely not getting to the average person. And you got to wonder, how long can we go as a country where we don't have customers for the stores? We just have stores, okay? We're jamming into the wall, really. And what's needed and what the basic
permanently.
The basic income
we
is
just got to notice that 24-hour fitness is banks going bankrupt. Yep. Does that mean they're closing all of their facilities? And so that's a big chain. It's pretty big, and there's chains like that are going down.
Oh yeah. The basic, because that's discretionary spending. The basic income is demand side economics. You want to have a balance between supply and demand. That's a healthy, functioning economy with money rolling, some kind of funding or money rolling through the system, and recycling. The recycling of money through the system is called the velocity of money, and it's plummeting. It's just kind of sitting there, like you said, if you have any at all. Or if you make sure that the rich guys get their money, okay, now they've got it. They're supposed to be job producers, but they don't have customers. They got to have customers.
Right.
There's nothing. The system stops, and we are on. This whole thing is not built on a foundation of balance, you know, and so we're just going to continue to see this until, you know, we know what to ask for, and this is one of the problem areas is what do we ask for as the majority, 99%. You know, we have people protesting. And you know, I don't want to question anybody who wants to see things change at all, except we need to know what we really want, and the ones at the top know how to obfuscate us asking for this or demanding it or making it happen, is that they benefit from the system being the way that it is, and that's not going to be their call. They're not going to be able to have a voice in that once people gets in their head what it is to do. And since we're on Aquarian Radio, I'll take it up a notch further in terms of the exopolitical thing that's going on. So if you study things like you look from that, go out in space in your space capsule and you look at planet Earth and what's going on, you're in your UFO, what's up with the humans, right? Unprogramming ourselves and getting down to brass tacks and making sure everybody's okay no matter what is a maturity level that we need to get to before we're able to handle anything more than that. And I've always hated that. I don't like it when people say, well, you humans can't handle the truth. Well, I don't want to swear on this program, but I'd like to swear, but I won't. But it's just like, no, I mean, they make us handle war. They make us handle famine. They make us handle illness. They make us handle a lot of stuff that is soul-crushing. But this is the thing. And it can be done on an individual to a certain point. You can work on your peacefulness and yourself, which is a big component. But that's not the game here. The game here is for us to bring the collective into a more enlightened way of thinking, an enlightened way of thinking about each other and working with each other. And we've been very stubborn as a race, you know. I said it before. We've all been sent to our rooms to think about what we did, you know. But it wasn't me that did it, or you that did it. This is in our collective way of thinking, as human collective.
Right.
I don't mean that in any economic kind of way, but we are a family. We are all inhuman earth suits that have to have a place to live and water and food and good food and clean air and all those things, and we just let this group of people deny us that. And I hope that it gets to the point where we start to call it out, but it does. We do need really super practical right now stuff. Okay, so I lately have been using the hashtag basic income now, because we're right there now. We are being paid to stay home, and like Debra said, as this unfolds, some people will never be employed again because the jobs aren't going to be there. They're going to get older, or we're going to start to move things with technology. It's one sort of ammo we can lob at our problems. And I would have to say this, Janet, because you and I are Star Trekian Trekkies from back in the day, right? So talking about where Trek entered the consciousness in the 60s to when we actually live in the Star Trek type universe minus war, probably something like this process would have to happen, where we would have to realize that what we're doing doesn't work and make the changes that puts us in what you call the Star Trekian, modality there, Star Trekianness, It'd have to be this messy, apparently.
I think that's what this is. This is the perturbation. This is the catalyst that propels us. Because what we were doing, we were kind of stuck. We were just going around with the status quo. And I always thought I like my status quo. So don't rock the boat. Let's keep on going. But as a society, we were making very slow progress, but we were cooking up our atmosphere. So I think what happened was we had extraterrestrial intervention to get us off our ducks, because last summer, the same time last summer, I was sitting in my office here and in the living room, which faces the Haleakala, and it was so unbearably hot. I felt like I was being microwaved. And what happened was these centipedes, like 5, 6, 7 inches long, were just, I guess, coming up in any crack or crevice. I think it was too hot for them, and they were coming inside. And I'd go to lie down in my bed, and there's a freaking centipede. And so at night, I was terrified to just go to the bathroom. And it was like, I guess they get these, so we get these, what do you call it? When the animals and the bugs, locusts, it was like the biblical times. So
yeah, right.
we had the virus, and then we had the locusts, and that leads to starvation, that leads to war. But I want to kind of wrap up this first part with basic minimum income. Great job. And we could talk about this forever, and we will on future shows, because there's so much to cover about that. And I want to touch base on several issues that are really rocking our world right now. So let's finish up that, and then we'll go into Debra's thing she wants to talk about with mask, no mask, and we can maybe talk about what's going on with that debate and how that's fueling the, what do I want to call it, not the pandemic, but the, martial law, because we've been predicting that when Trump got in, he's never going to leave, he's going to not let that happen, he's going to declare martial law. So we've been saying that for 3.5 years now, and here what is happening. They're going into Portland, they're going into Chicago, I heard they're going into Albuquerque, and this is a test case for going in, and basically the military is going to take over. And what are they doing? They're taking people in off the street, and they are not marked. The vehicles are not marked. They put these protesters in these vehicles. This is what happened with Hitler. This is what's happened before. Why does history have to repeat itself? Okay, I'm going to pass it now to Debra to comment, add to your 2 cents, take us down another topic. Over to you, Debra. And thank you, Karen. We'll
about Portland or about masks?
Anything you want to talk. You said you want to talk about masks.
What's going on in
Tell
Portland?
us what you want to talk about.
Well, what's going on in Portland is just disgusting. And what's worse is the conservative media is creating a reality that doesn't exist in these cities to justify what Trump's doing. Mm-hmm. When was the police ever allowed to be unidentified? I mean, there's laws in every state where the police have to be, it's required for them to be identified. You don't know who's pulling you off the street. It could be one of these extremist groups on the left or the right. Who knows? But when people aren't identified,
it could just be a rapist. It could be some rapist.
Exactly. It could be someone posing. Like, how is this okay in today's society? That's the part I don't get. Like, why are people okay with this? The whole country should be up in arms over this.
Well, I think it's okay because Trump normalized the abnormal. And so they're going, they shouldn't have let them do that. They got to go in and get them. They got to go stop this. We can't let this happen. But the next thing, which these trumpets, they call them trumpets, don't realize is that allows martial law. And
exactly.
So they announced that they're going to have 100 million vaccines by, October, they're hoping, so that Trump will be the hero.
They haven't even discovered the vaccine yet. How are they going to have 100 million vaccines?
Because they're not going to push out a fake vaccine. They're going to go in. I got it this morning. I just got it, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But if they have martial law, they can just go door to door, grab your ass, give you a vaccination. They're going to have 100 million vaccines. And you'll be the guinea pig. You might live, you might die. They might give you a variety that is, that's going to be the new, put them in the gas tank, the gas chambers, right? The new gas chamber will be the vaccine that they force you to take, and they can force you. You want to go in a store? Where's your little thing, chip in your wrist that shows you got your vaccine? They can force you. That's what they've talked about for years in these late grade Planet Earth evangelistic church. Everybody's gonna get the you're gonna get the mark of the beast, right? That goes back to your childhood. I read what was his name? Late grade Planet Earth. Hal Lindsey, right? And I went,
Hal Lindsey.
Holy crap! I was like 13 years old. I read that. I go, oh my God, we're screwed. Well, at least I got to live 53 years in between, but here I am, 66. It's like, damn, are they just going to line us up now? They have martial law, and you want to eat? Here's your vaccine. Here's your mark. Yeah. Woo.
Well, yeah,
Go ahead.
That's the philosophical set of ideas, and they've been built over quite a period of time, and part of the problem with resolving anything is that we're all bifurcated and in our little clumps, and we only get. I'm one of those people that I finally learned after being in a kind of a vacuum to go look at a lot of different ideas. The group I was with literally would not read about anything unless it came from one of their professors or writers or something. And my dad even worked in one of the very large. It was a bookstore that produced the material. So what was kind of funny about that is whenever an issue came up in society, they literally would not talk about it until one of their guys wrote a book about it. So that was a little because they need to have the correct perspective on things. So, that's getting us all fragmented and not zeroing in on, some situations. And the elephant in my room, in my world, is not particularly any group of people or any of that. It's the fact that all of these, this I call it richcraft, all of this richcraft that has created all these kind of bizarro responses to things is a screen. It's a screen against recognizing our common humanity. It's a screen against recognizing what's going on with poverty and deprivation. It's causing us, people that talk about vaccines or not vaccines, could we go back up a step and talk about our food, our quality of our food, the quality of our air, the toxin loads? The vaccines are just kind of response to illness that we get because of the environment that we're living in right now. So, I think I'm gonna sort of watch and see, and it's a lot of observation going on. You can't really do much, but the thing is so if you're, or even the mask, no mask thing, I'll tell you what the mask issue is, in my opinion. Don't have to believe it anybody, but here's the deal. My assessment of our president is that he is a narcissistic psychopath. That's a term. That's a thing. Okay, and I know what that is. I know what that is because the organization I grew up supported, coddled, and fostered these kind of guys, the mega preacher and the elders of the church and the dads, and there was always a patriarchal aspect. But if you tended to be in that kind of, have an empathectomy, and that's what it attracted. So I dealt with those my whole life, and I'll tell you what you get with one of those. Okay, there's only one thing that you get from one of those: betrayal. And that doesn't mean just the people that they raise up as the enemy, so the adversary creation that they say, see that boogeyman over there? I'm going to save you from that boogeyman. That is what they do to the followers, because what it is that person who's lying to you and you're sucking it up or not opposing them, or not just walking away, that's what I didn't have to do, then they think you're stupid because you believe their lies. Okay, so then the mask thing, I could see why a narcissist would not want to put a mask on. They're already wearing one thing, metaphorically speaking. But the other thing is that they're into who they are and their face and their hair and their persona. And I mean, that's a narcissist nightmare. But it's also something I've identified in groups. You put a narcissistic psychopath in a group, and this is one of the techniques they have. It's a loyalty test. And it means that you're going to assert that you don't have to do the thing. Well, here's the deal. If we do have, whatever level we have this virus going around, it's ecumenical and nonpartisan. Okay, you're vulnerable in a human body, and these things happen. Just for my historical, perspective, I've been looking at the Black Death, the Black Plague, and how cities responded, and what happened in the 1920s with the Spanish flu and everything. And by the end of that thing, everyone was wearing a mask because they knew somebody who died. That's the raw pain of it.
Absolutely.
So I recognize people feel they have their freedom threatened, but it ain't from a mask. There's other things going on, and they've kind of focused on this way. And like I said, I've watched the discussions, and I've watched it for a while now because of watching the exopolitics world is very bifurcated. But here's the deal: I have asthma. Lots of people have conditions that we're now in solitary confinement unless we have some form of, societal cooperation. And I am in that situation because of a virus. So everyone has an underlying condition unless they're eating really well and have everything they need. Then they're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. It's not just an old people thing. It's an everybody thing. And people who get this thing and kind of recover, right, are having a lot of issues with the side effects and the complications that are going on. So we just really need to be very focused on what's really happening.
Lifelong. Once you recover, you might be debilitated the rest of your life. So these people say, I don't care if I get exposed, I won't be affected, or I'll recover. No, you might just have shortened your life expectancy by 20 years. I
kind of feel like it's the same kind of people that are going to stay in the room when people are playing Russian roulette. Like, odds it won't be you, but odds it could be you. And so I think the other thing is we need to be listening to the healthcare professionals because of the fact, and our first responders and our essential workers. With this, I don't want to do it thing. You're putting them at risk. They got to be in contact with, a situation all the time, and how disheartening it would be that and I've heard this where a healthcare worker was at the work all day and people were dying and everything, and he goes home and he drives by a bar and everybody's out there drinking with no mask on. I think we need to be kind of respectful of what they're trying to do to help us. And so, I don't know. That's my opinion. I know it's not everyone thinks that way or thinks I'm a sheeple, whatever. This is not about – and I'm a little confused. Well, I'm not confused, but I just think it's weird that people say, this was a weaponized thing, but I'm not going to wear a mask. Like, they hold both positions, and I'm like, could you, pick a rant? Pick a rant, one or the other.
Well, how do they, they make no sense. Viruses are not political. And so you're playing Russian roulette with your own life, with your family's life, with your community's life, with your, and you're right then where another person begins. So you have no right to kill somebody. I predicted someday that's going to be declared manslaughter. And somewhere down the line, maybe in 6 months or a year, if you intentionally go out and infect somebody by, not wearing a mask, and then you get it, because they can track down, the initial person, especially like in Maui here. I was on a chat, and I said, in Maui here, if you come over here, you sign a contract to quarantine yourself, to wear a mask, and you go out and you break your quarantine, they arrest you, they fine you. I think they put you on the next plane out. It's like, tough shit, you're going. You hope there's somebody out there to pick up your story out because you violated your quarantine. And somebody in the chat goes, oh, no, that's, a dictatorship. But no, we already learned that with the, missionaries. The Hawaiian culture.
Oh, yeah.
They know what happens when you bring in. We have quarantines for animals. You can't bring your pets over unless they dump through a hoop. You can't bring plants over. If they catch you bringing in plants, or they look at the planes for snakes. I mean, we are like quarantine culture, and we don't want that shit coming in and destroying the Hawaii environment. So Debra, what do you think?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The one thing that I've discovered is most people who are anti-mask are also pro-life. So I personally think it makes them a hypocrite, right? You feel like you have the right to tell a woman what to do with her body, but nobody has the right to tell you to stop, endangering the people around you. Like, really?
Exactly.
And so anytime I hear someone who's screaming about masks, I'm like, you're pro-life, aren't you? Right? And they know where that conversation's going. So they usually try to get out of there because it makes an ass out of them.
Yeah, I know where the pro-life mindset is, and the thing is they're not pro-life; they're pro-sacrifice. They're not pro-life. They want the women, to sacrifice when once the baby's born. Are they going to give you a basic income so you can stay home with that baby? Hell no.
Absolutely.
Are they going to make sure that families are financially capable of raising a kid by making sure the wages are up where they need to be? No. Then it's a whole different set of operating principles that are not even a thing anymore. I mean, we've got to realize that our operational platform has been altered very significantly, where the ideas that we had before and what's going to happen a year or two down the road are completely different set of operational procedures, because what we have had up to now is failing. It's collapsing. It's failing.
Right.
And so, okay, I think for me, I just put my head down and say, okay, what would help everybody right now? That's what I'm focused on. And the ideas that I've been told in the past, I was not satisfied with because they were incomplete and it didn't cover everybody. And there's always this question you have to ask: who benefits? Unfortunately, somebody somewhere benefits from controlling women. Somebody somewhere benefits from the fact that wages are stagnant. Somebody somewhere benefits when we lose our house, which happened to me. So, it's time that whoever that is written out of the script of what's good for everybody.
So who is it? Who's all the money? Who's benefiting? What I heard today is that the reason why Trump is pushing now for masks and the vaccine is that he's got a hand in it now. So he's going to profit when those things get sold. So it's always about money. When you're dealing with a sociopathic, psychopathic, narcissistic personality disorder person, that's what they're about. How can I benefit what's in it for me? And then when they figure that out, I think that's why we're seeing the turnabout. Wear a mask, wear a mask. So, I mean, I don't know if that's conspiracy or if that's actual. It's hard to fact-check things on that level. But what is the shift? Why say no mask? Look at me. I'm going out, defying the odds, doing an event. He never gets sick. And now, today, he's saying, well, yeah, you should wear a mask. What's behind that? Go ahead.
If it's Trump, it's because what happened to the president of Brazil? He's got the thing. You know, now we're starting to know people.
He didn't care when Boris Johnson got it. He didn't care when Boris got it. And Boris was all these no-mask dictators. You know, these are the
I think
far-right
what's
dictators.
going on with Trump in a very specific kind of way is self-preservational, is that because he did some rallies and stuff like that, the Secret Service who protects his butt there's quite a few of them that have gotten ill. And so that's right in his proximity. Narcissistic, psychopathic people only care about what affects them. And that, I think what's going on is that there's some blowback in that area. It's hard to say. I just know that he's wearing a mask metaphorically in the sense that whatever's coming out of his mouth and what his real intentions are not the same thing. And that's true for all the, oligarch class. America is not a democracy. It's not a republic. It's an oligarch class. And we are going to suffer the results of that unless we learn from past responses. So, an FDR type person comes along, or we just simply, the people, figure out what they need to be asking for. And so we're kind of, as a group, a problem, reaction, solution cycle is, here's the problem, it's terrible. And then the reaction is given to us because the people created the problem, reaction, and solution. And then we say, okay, yeah, that. So my head exploded a couple days ago. Just felt like that. And I was trying to figure out what is the Democratic response with interest to what's going on with the basic income sort of politically. And Biden came out with his we're going to make jobs for caregivers. And I was like, so it's going to be this new program, and they're going to be taxes. I'm not saying we shouldn't support caregivers or even that effort shouldn't exist, but that's not supporting the ones who are actually doing it right now. That's some job someday when you fight the Congress to get it. That's years away. He could be the way that they weasel out of support in the basic income, which is now being more recognized in the progressive wing of the party, is it's just like an entertainment situation by itself to watch how they weasel away from that and try to give us some kind of means-tested solution. Hey, my dog's barking in the background. Someone else needs to talk.
Oh, I can hardly hear him, but okay. Debra, what do you have to say?
Well, they've determined that just 2 months of us wearing masks could get this virus in check and get the economy back on track. Something so simple. Right? Could solve the problem. And that's the other thing. People think the mask is to protect them. It's not to protect you. It's to protect the people around you. You're not that special.
Right. Well, it's very efficient both ways. They show these illustrated dynamics of where the air goes, right? You give one person, and it's very effective if you both wear it. And they did some studies with the hairdressers, and they had one where two of the hairdressers caught it, but they wore a mask, and none of their clients got it, and the other way around. Right. Everybody wore it. They had, so they're very effective. And case in point, Maui, Hawaii in general, we have 24 dead. Look at the rest of the country. It's like we are a quarantine society. We wear masks, we social distance. We've been super cautious since moment one. And, we don't let people in unless they're going to be quarantined. and we have 24 dead. We still are getting cases. We got 2 cases yesterday, but we're doing much, much better than Florida that lost what? I don't know what. I saw the numbers. It's so staggering. There's thousands and thousands and thousands are getting infected. We had 1,000 people die yesterday. You know, so we're going to
1,100 today.
Yeah, 1,100 people today. Yeah, yesterday's down. So, you know, 1,100 people every day dying. You know, we're going to have 385, well, whatever, before the end of the year. How many we're going to have? How many days left? Let's just say 1,000 on the average. Are we going to get this checked? Is it going to keep going up? Or are we going to have 10,000 people dying? Well, what does it take for people to put on a freaking mask? Just put on. So, it's not going to hurt you. And if you've got COPD and you can't wear a mask, you can get yourself a shield. Do something, but quit spitting all over everybody and breathing into everybody. Like you have a right to kill people, you know? This blows my mind. You know. Did Karen come back?
Yeah, I'm back. My dog got excited about the neighbors.
Well, that's very exciting. No. You still have both your dogs?
Oh yeah, they're quarantined with us. We got some good quarantine pals here, right, or lockdown pals, and they're doing healthy and happy. And you know that's when I get back to the caregiving thing. I always try to include that this idea that care of each other and our pets and the planet and animals and plants, people and kids and elders and disabled is an intrinsic human work. And sort of what I'm doing is working on a way to like communicate that from this caregiver experience that I had. So I'll let you guys know when I've kind of got that put together. It's probably going to be just kind of a podcasting and also writing a book. Which, like, everything feels so urgent, it's hard to just knuckle down and do some, you know, structural work. So I can communicate my perspective about intrinsic human work. So part of why my head exploded on Biden, and I, you know, if he's going to give some money to some caregivers, if he's going to get some money to some caregivers, I'm happy about that. However, the problem with the response of the government is the lag time. And they always have it's something that you have to jump through hoops to get. And caregiving and caretaking of each other is intrinsic work. You don't clock in. You know, mom doesn't clock your dad. Doesn't clock in at 9 to 5 and then just leave the kids by themselves after that. It's a kind of a continuum. And so the idea of a basic income, one aspect of it, besides it's not just free money. So it means that you don't go down and out. You put a floor to poverty. You make sure everybody has what they need and has some, you know, trading chips in our Monopoly game. And it also supports people that currently are not compensated, haven't been for a long time. I'll tell you what, this virus and the lockdown and all that, it is killing our caregivers. I mean, I'm on several caregiver groups, and the DEFCON 5 of concern about themselves and their vulnerable loved one is like... it's really on. And yet what Biden responded to was very narrow kind of way of looking at it. So I felt like, okay, I need to talk about that very specifically. It's why I've been kind of quiet also. It's because I want to address it, but I want to do it in a way that well, you're not quiet. I don't want to man. I know. I'm kind of like wind me up, stick me in a corner, and I'll entertain you for hours kind of thing. But, yeah.
Okay, so what do we do about that? It's like we're in the middle of World War III, and then people are still back. You know, there's like different modalities. So he's back in debate mode. Well, we can give the caregivers money, but that's not how things are now. We're in another level of panic, and how do we do this? And the caregivers are all, you know, getting infected and dropping over, and going home infecting their kids. And, you know.
You get shoved in. I've been shoved into survival mode so much that I kind of have a way of coping. First and foremost, do what you can every day to shore up your your life system, whatever it is, to respond to it. So you talked about gardens earlier. We put in a garden. We do green because we've had our fancier plants get destroyed. And we did greens, mustard greens, collard greens, and you know, Brett's my fella is like a Depression era cook because he learned from his grandma, so he knows how to cook all that stuff. We got a dehydrator. I mean, you can only go so far. We can't get everything that way, but we can at least, you know, make sure we got a little more than we've had before to save by. And then everyone's having to learn how to interact with each other now. So there's just sort of that day-to-day response to it. And then it helps, I think. One of the things that a friend of mine, a lady who had a daughter with severe seizure disorder, and they hadn't quite found her medication level, so she's having major problems and has to rush off to the hospital. And then she'd get back, and she says, when you get back from the hospital or out of the crisis, try to get back to something that you could recognize as normal as quickly as possible. Yes, the bad thing happened, but if you could kind of stabilize in some way, try to. Some of what I've had to apply is extreme acceptance, which is a sort of a Zen thing where you just accept this is how things are. And that's not easy. It takes practice. And then also recognize what's next. Okay, we're having a major disruption here. We will emerge in some form or fashion. What do we want that to look like for yourself personally and then collectively? To me, I want to address the collective aspects of it because I know that people's personal resilience and ability to respond to this is, of course, greatly reduced. And we got an idea on the table that I'm kind of jazzed about because I worry about all my family and friends and loved ones. I've been kind of overwhelmed with with that, in a sense, being an empathic person. I've had to kind of really just think the best for everybody, and you know, not in a Pollyanna kind of way, but just okay, you know, it's very difficult to manage, you know, emotionally. Hey, I'm in therapy. I've been doing therapy for a long time. My church wouldn't let anyone do therapy. I'm in therapy right now, and that's okay. That's good. That's good for me. And you can reach out. There are outreaches now for people to deal emotionally with things. I just want to let people know, go look, because they do recognize people are getting crushed here. And then,
well, look at all the people that have questionable deaths in the last 2 weeks. You know, Elvis's grandson killed himself. So there's people, besides dying because they catch COVID, they're dying because of the depression and anxiety over this whole thing. You know, so
yeah, they call
next
it
will be
deaths
they'll
of
die
despair.
because they don't get food. Yeah, death of despair.
That's happened after the 2008 thing, by the way. It's really afflicted young people as well because they have not had a secure looking future for a while. You know, they get a degree and they end up having to work at you know, Starbucks or something and try to exist on that. We've really not left a good situation for younger people. And, you know, that's a group of people that's paying attention right now to what can the solution be because they've watched, it's failed them. There's a lot of people that the way things were, it failed them. Now, for a while, you tend to blame yourself. If only I would have just. But hopefully you educate yourself in such a way or think it through in such a way to realize if you look around, we're failed. We're being allowed to crash and burn. It's like having a bridge go out and you don't put a blockade in front of it and say bridge out. People go down that road and into the water. That's what we're doing right now because we're not protecting the consumer. If you got to be economical about it, we're not protecting people from these things that are happening. And yeah, that's a thing. I have my every third day syndrome, so because of the traumas that I've been through in life, I'm on day one. Yeah, I'm good. I'm happening. Next day it's kind of like, oh no, what am I going to do? And third day's like, oh God, get me off this planet. You know, so it's like 3-day cycle-ish. Maybe a little more 5-day because I've been trying. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of that. And that would be a normal reaction, is this insecurity and precarious feeling. but you don't need to necessarily completely internalize it, which most of us have been programmed to do. Start looking at it as this is a system we are in that is failing us, and it can get that weight of guilt. Oh, if I just would have done that thing, off of you, and then you'll think better. That's one thing basic income does. This idea has been tried already. Okay, in the United States,
right.
The mayor of Stockton, Michael Tubbs is his name. He's kind of a younger guy, and he tried a basic income. He got some funding from the tech world can be in Stockton. I'm not sure about funding, but he gave $500 a month to a select group of people, and that was the thing. It took the pressure off them. They could think straighter. They didn't feel so hopeless. It was a big uplift, to your mind, to know that you're not completely at 0 point, And then now, which is kind of exciting, some of the tech gurus, particularly Jack Dorsey, the head of Twitter, don't get me started on Twitter, but anyway, yeah, he's giving millions of dollars to help 15 mayors are on the ball of providing some form of basic income test. So I think we're kind of giving up on the political process. That's not going where we need it to go. And now everyone has had a stimulus, so they had something, maybe the unemployment or whatever. It's kind of dawning on them that a basic income might be a good idea when everything's kind of falling apart and we're waiting for things to get to the new normal and expect a new normal.
Okay,
so yeah,
let me interject something here.
Sure.
Here. So for the stimulus, the last $2 trillion stimulus, they didn't print $2 trillion worth of paper money. They went and they made two $1 trillion coins that were about the size of a quarter. And there's 60 in the vault, so each coin is worth $1 trillion. That just shows how fake money is, right? It's only worth what
right.
The value we put. This little coin is worth $1 trillion, not 100, not a billion, $1 trillion. Okay, and if somebody got that, they would have the whole economy of the United States. So, and they're going to pass another $1 trillion, so there'll be 3 of these little $1 trillion coins sitting in a vault somewhere, saying that's the American money. So let's wrap this up. We have about 30 minutes, and let's start looking at solutions. We've covered a 3/4 of the show in problems, and our reaction is, oh, shit, and depression and suicide. Any other reactions, Deborah, that you have or people you know have? And then we'll go to solutions. What are the reactions to these things?
Reactions to what? The topics we've been talking about?
Yeah, everything we've been talking about. Mask, no mask. Like, for example, the mask, no mask debate happened, and then they started to pull out guns and throw themselves on the floor, these little people that just having kids trying to push past
the only thing
people.
The only thing COVID taught me about how to survive, all I needed to survive was a gun in a garden.
All you need to survive is a gun in a garden.
You want to get off this matrix and this corporate slave society world, get yourself a gun in a garden and you'll be fine.
Okay. Well, I don't have the balls to shoot it. They come running up the hill, and I try to. What they found in the wars that 3/4 of the soldiers, even when they had somebody coming that straight out and were going to kill them, they shot over their heads. And that's men that are trained to do this. I mean, really, somebody's going to come after me, and I'm going to I'll tell you, the one thing I do is I might kick their ass and win, but that's because something kicks in on a primal level, but there's something about killing somebody, it's really hard. Anyway, but I guess you can threaten. Okay, so gun in the garden is one solution. Yeah, and the other problem I saw was that there was one poor bus driver, and he says, put your mask on before you come on the bus, and they tunnel him to death. I was like, what a crazy freaking world. You're going to kill somebody over They ask you to wear a mask. Oh, what's going to Okay, what other problems do you see? Have you noticed on your end? I mean, reactions to problems. What have you seen, Debra, on your end?
I think the universal income is a solution to poverty. It's a solution out of poverty, I think, in our society. I think the stimulus money is proof positive that it works, right? We didn't go into a depression or fall off that financial cliff because of that stimulus money we were all given, be it individuals or corporations. It didn't matter who it was. And everybody benefited, from the members of Congress, down to, the maid at the local hotel. It didn't matter who you were. And that's what kept this from being worse than it is, but that's about to end next week. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks if nothing new is passed. But I think the stimulus money makes a tremendous argument for universal income.
Yeah.
Well, I just got a hot off the presses flash from I check all these stimulus broadcastings, right? And this one says it's confirmed. Another one said it's going to probably be passed August 3rd, and then they're going to go in their break, but they'll set up the system that we'll start getting our payments. So we're looking at today's 23rd of July. So we have 31 days. Yeah. So another 2 weeks. And we're going to start seeing some money coming. It's going to be $1,200 again per person. I don't know what the kids get. They're going to catch up on some people they went through the holes. They're going to catch up those people. But it's a one-time thing. And the Democrats were floating $2,000 a month until the end of the crisis. So it's kind of like buying a car. I want $20,000. I'm going to pay $10,000, and you meet in the middle. So the meeting in the middle is $1,200 one time. I don't think that's really fair. $2,000 till the end of COVID, and retroactive till March, and now it's a one-time $1,200. So there's where you get it, people. If you vote red, you get $1,200. If you vote blue, you get something that will help you survive until the end of COVID. So anyway, you keep backing that Trump guy who just really thinks of you. Meanwhile, he gives all his buddy billions and trillions of dollars. That first CARES Act, or whatever that was called, the first one that passed in March, a lot of that money went to people that had no business getting money. They didn't need it. They needed it like a hole in the head. So, corruption. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Debra? I'll climb off with my pulpit.
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. Karen.
Yeah.
What are the reactions you've noticed from people anywhere, in the media, on television, in your life?
Oh, yeah. Well, my father passed in 2005, and my mother became a widow amongst some of her friends that were widows. And something she said I thought was very interesting, I thought about that, is that you tend to, if you're in a crisis, you tend to react by doing more of the same thing that you do. It takes a while to, so this one friend of hers, the husband ran the business, and then he passed, and she tried to run the business because that's what she knew about. And one day realized that was his dream and idea, not mine. So you tend to kind of stay in your patterns until you're kind of ready to look at new ways of doing things. So I see a lot of that. So people have kind of drilled down into their belief system, and probably all of us have a mix of things that are probably pretty valid, as far as observations go. And some of it would need to be altered because the situation has changed. And so there's a lot of talking past each other and over each other and stomping on each other happening right now when a lot of what's being thrown around kind of doesn't matter. The thing's already happening that will change everything and accelerate change. So kind of that's what I'm seeing is most people are like drilling down into a talking point, and there's a lot of anger, just free-flowing anger. And underneath that anger is, I think, despair and fear. And so we want to see the response that makes sense. Some people who are like, from my grandma's era are saying, and younger, all the way to younger people, is that on the left they're saying Green New Deal type of thing. So New Deal. So we need a new social contract, okay? And we're used to a certain way of looking at things that was going to prevent that happening collectively until we change, receive this new information and process. And so, for instance, one of the things that happened from the CARES Act is we got the one-time payment. A lot of people did not get that payment. I just want you to know I've got family members that are, and so you get you're supposed to go do this and that, and why didn't you just go do that? That's not an individual thing. That is a deliberate oversight of some what I call poverty traps that have prevented people from getting it. And so that was not addressed. It hasn't been addressed going into the second one, so I'd expect the same thing. Not everyone who deserves to have unemployment got it. And other thing is between the first payment and the second payment, the job that you had that you got the unemployment for is going away. So now what, And we did the top-down thing. We gave the biggest wealth transfer in the history of our country, and it's not completely trickling down because our system isn't made to let it trickle. There's giant dams along the way, so by the time it gets to whatever level you are, you're barely getting anything to make it. So that, I think what I see is this mechanism of response is going to have to keep failing and failing until we know what we need to be asking for. And the money in our economy is supposed to support everybody, and it wasn't doing that before this. And so what we're seeing is this is doomed to fail if we don't understand very basic stuff, that people need money in our system. They need money, and they need a systemic payment, not a one-off thing, because, people get their money and they're like, all the needs are screaming at them, and they're not spending it. If they get it, they're kind of like very carefully, because we have any idea of when the next support is coming. Now that will wipe out the housing industry, it'll wipe out the car industry, it'll wipe out whole industries that require that you make a decision, I'm going to pay X amount per month to have this house or have this car or whatever. We've got to give people the basis so they can make decisions that are more cyclical in participation. And by doing that, the reason why they're saying 2,000 now instead of 1,000 back then when Andrew Yang was on the campaign trail is because Andrew Yang's proposal was saying, here, we're going to give you this baseline to go with, and then you're going to go do a little work or have a little business or something for the rest of what it is that you need. But with this type of scenario that we have, you can't do that. This is not the best time to try to start a business, just saying. So they upped it to 2,000, and then it just keeps being tossed around. And I look to the group of people testing the concept and very kind of it dawning on them what it is we need to ask for. Now, past that thing, the basic income, we also need to talk about the fraud and disincentives to wealth building in our system, including our healthcare system, housing issue. We need I want to say the F word, un-F the economy that was so vulnerable before this happened.
How do we finance these? That was a big criticism with the basic minimum needs.
I don't even listen to people. I don't listen to them. Go listen. The banks since 2008 have been getting $60 billion a month It's called quantitative easing
I
infinity.
understand.
So there's some money right there. A couple hundred apiece, actually. That's the thing.
That one guy who ran for president, if he would have he could have given every American $1 million and still spent less than what he was spending to run.
Oh,
what was that guy's name?
Oh, you mean Bloomberg? Mayor Bloomberg. Bloomberg.
Bloomberg. Why didn't you just spend us all $1 million? We'd be fine. But it's like,
the thing about Richcraft is people kind of reach this threshold where they different paradigm, so they don't really understand what's going on with the bottom level. There's no comprehension capacity unless they've been through it, and that's really true for poverty. You can't tell people that the system that they say that they're complaining about, welfare or whatever like that, really doesn't work very well. They don't want to hear it because, beggars can't be choosers and bullshit like that. They don't understand that these systems don't work very well, and they're pretty rickety and pretty, they don't work as well as people think they do, and unless they're in it now, trying to get through stamps, trying to get unemployment, all of that. Now and if you would have asked, if you would have not shamed poor people and listened to what they were saying, they would tell you that there is no net. There is no safety net. In fact, you're likely to get hung up in a hole and break your neck than you are to be saved. And I hate that, but that's the truth. I think about the mask. Okay, let's talk about the mask thing. Every state in the country is supposed to have an allocation from the stockpile. In New Mexico, the governor talked about that, and she said that when they got their supply, it was 25% of what they asked for. A lot of the masks were out of date, and they were stored in such a way that they had mold growing on them, and they were completely useless. Well, okay, if you're giving money every quarter or however they do the budgeting for that stockpile, how come the stuff's all ratty? It's because somebody took the money and didn't refresh the supply. So, there's so many things that have to be repaired. And that's like money that went away somewhere to somebody's pocket or vault or whatever. But we don't have any mechanism right now to assess what happens when we do a big tranche of money. But the results are this, that people are hurting, suffering, and they don't have enough. That's your result. Forget all the complexities of it or even the criminality of it. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, bippity, boppity, boo. Lots of people are hurting and suffering and are in poverty. I mean, I don't really want to argue, but can we afford it? Are you kidding me? Jeff Bezos could do it himself. He could supply.
Well, we know these billionaires, now trillionaires, if they, I see nothing wrong with asking people that are billionaires and trillionaires to put something back, not into their philanthropy, which just gives them, oh, you're such a wonderful person. No, it needs to go back into the tax stream, which will allow us to provide these basic needs for humanity, like educate everybody on the planet and re-educate them. If they want to change, if they go down online and they've worked 10 years in a job and they want to switch to another job, give them the education because, it's boring to work the same thing. That's, who decides that what we want to do is come down this planet and just work all of our lives? Maybe there's some, other reasons for life besides just coming down and being a slave working our entire life. So giving us the basic needs like education, food. These billionaires could feed everybody and nobody starved. In fact, there was one of the future, I watched these time travel things, and this time traveler says, well, in the future, nobody starved. Everybody has their food. Everybody has their needs met. So, and I think we would have a whole much kinder, loving, more conscious planet if we met the needs, not just like a BMI with a certain income, blah, 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 but just go, here's the needs. You need food. You need water. You need shelter. You need education. You need transportation. And you need communication to have dignity. Let's create lives that everybody can have their basic needs met and they can live in dignity. From there, people are naturally, they like to contribute, they like to be creative, and they can work for luxuries, but meet needs. And the people are billionaires because They're billionaires that have profited from our labor. Our labor bought products. We bought products and services from them. And so it is a system, and now you can't be a billionaire or a trillionaire unless you have people, you know, in the cycle of economy, you know, creating an economy. So,
well,
okay,
I think
we
it'd
are
be in
down
their best
to
interest.
10 minutes.
Yeah, it would be in their best interest. Because you know, if people can't buy your shit, how long are you going to have your money? You know,
Right.
Yeah, you'll have it, but I mean, it's just, you're going to let the whole thing go. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah,
well,
I
Henry
think
Ford
if we
did that. Henry Ford,
yeah.
when he made these car factories, he says, well, who's going to buy the cars? Well, I better give my workers at the factory a decent wage. And I think he gave them like $27 an hour or something. So they could. But he said, well, how can I make these cars and my own workers can't afford them? So he figured out what it would take for his employees to be able to afford the car, and that's what he gave them, their starting wage. So let's figure that out. But I think today what it costs to pay rent and live in a city. There's a study out. I should have grabbed that. They said nobody can afford to pay their rent and live decently in America anymore. We can't even pay the rent of these cities. Nobody's making it. For very few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and
COVID.
also applying technology has if you go from here to Star Trek, it's technology, and part of what is going on too in the numbers is that applied technology is deflationary. So if you use algorithms to do something instead of a human doing it, you're not paying the algorithm, per se to do it, and it does bring the cost down. It's just a matter of making sure that the cost comes down enough to be affordable. So there's something to that. But literally, some of the technology we're playing with now would just reduce the need for money at all. And that's something that, when I talk about capitalism, arguing with socialism, it's like, what about what technology can do? If you can build a house with a big giant 3D printer in an hour or whatever, you take in a lot of money out of the equation to do that. I mean, money's really not involved. It's just setting the technology up, and then it works for us to do this thing. And we're going to have more of that. We need to catch up to that by making sure what will happen is your work changes. Your work changes from being I'm going to go to work in my jobby job right now to what's my work. And work being I'm a painter, I take care of animals. Your work, it's a life work choice rather than I have to do this thing, which is probably going to be automated. So, and I think it would shock people if they saw what could be automated. And that's not a bad thing. We just need to make sure everyone can participate in this new paradigm.
It's nothing wrong with automating it, and you still give people money so they can consume how it gets created is irrelevant. If you have a robot make it or a human make it, but the person, their job is to consume, and so you need people to buy what the robots make. You need something to buy what the humans make, and everything in between. So that's our job. I'm going to buy things.
Yeah. It's also your job to explore your spirituality. It's your job to explore your talent. And humanity with this jobby job system that we have is really pretty much on lockdown. And like I heard somebody, how many Einsteins have we let starve to death with the current system? They were little kids. They were really smart. They could have done something, but they're in a third world country, or even now here in the United States, it can happen. So that's the thing, is that it's a matter of making that vision and that choice, and that's where we need to go, and doing what you can to shore up yourself to survive talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have breath in your body to talk about it.
Yeah. I had this thing that I found that I'll just read it short. Imagine you were born in 1900. When you're 14, World War I begins and ends when you're 18 with 22 million dead. Soon the Spanish flu appears, killing 50 million people, and you're alive, 20 years old. When you're 29, you survive the global economic crisis with the collapse of the New York Stock Exchange, causing inflation, unemployment, and famine. When you're 33 years old, the Nazis come to power. When you're 39, World War II begins. It ends when you're 45 years old with 60 million dead. In the Holocaust, 6 million Jews die. At 52, the Korean War begins. At 64, the Vietnam War begins and ends when you're 75. A child born in 1985 thinks his grandparents have no idea how difficult life is. Today, we have all the comforts in the new world amid a new pandemic. We complain because of mistaken buy into our homes where we have food, electricity, water, Wi-Fi, Netflix. None of that existed back in the day, but humanity survived those circumstances and never lost their joy of living. Anyway, I'm thankful for what I have. Debra, we're running out of time. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Universal income, love it. Solves a lot of problems. And wear a mask.
Wear a mask. And what else would you do? Grow food, dip yourself a good gun.
Honestly, seriously, it's all about taking steps to become what my son-in-law, who is a soldier in the U.S. Army, calls disconnecting from the matrix, right? How do you become self-sufficient? Think about every transaction in your life, and how do I make this transaction no longer dependent on this broken system that's no longer functioning and supporting us?
Well, that's
I
true.
could agree with that.
You know, we're not the solitary beast crashing through the jungle, though. We are kind of a codependent, interdependent species because we really we survive and thrive best when we interact with other people. And that's part of our basic design.
Absolutely.
And
but
so,
we used to survive in small groups very successfully. What happened to that?
Yeah. And that's a good point. And
that's probably what we can look at.
Yeah, there's other responses to that. So, for instance, because of our garden, we did a garden, but also I've been doing zero waste. I've been, when we had the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, and I started thinking about my, I'm dependent on a system of consumable, I say. Maybe I could do less of that. There's a lot of things, when our grandmas and grandpas did survive all of those things. I learned a lot of this stuff from my grandma who, people didn't buy clothes. They altered and traded their clothing in the thrift stores, and people were not throwing everything away. They try to figure out a way to try to reuse it. I mean, it's really that personal resilience, that personal responsibility is quite valid. And then what we need to do is support that. We do need our support from our society. We are interconnected. So I think it's kind of an all of the above thing, all of the above, whatever we can do to be self-resilient and participate in a way that we are value added. We add value to things. And the matrix, I think, will go of its own accord. It just doesn't have the support that it did before. When it lifts everybody down, it loses its credibility quite a bit.
Right, and my grandmothers knew how to can, but by the time you get to my mother who was born in 1922, she wasn't canning. So what happened? The turn of the century, we were canning, we were prepared for winter, so we all became a bunch of consumers, kind of bratish. I don't have to do that. I can go to the supermarket. But what if we went back to that? Living off the food that we grow in our gardens and preserving it so we can make it through the winter. That's how we used to do it before we had this global society just setting food around the world. And if you eat the food from the soil and the environment you live in, you tend to be healthier because you're more adapted to that food that's grown. The best food is the food that grows in your own backyard. I've done that. We've grown food, and I go down to the garden and go, oh, my God, it tastes so much better than what's in the grocery store. Why? Because it's really, truly alive. What you get in the grocery store is kind of dead by the time you get to it. Yeah. Okay, final words to everybody. Who was trying to talk? Go for it.
So I think I did last Debra.
I think we should turn Karen on to our guest, was it Joel, who talked about social currency?
Yeah.
They would have a lot to talk about. I think she would find that topic extraordinarily interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
We can invite him to come on our show if you want to do a guest sometime. We're going to talk off of this.
Did you have a show with him on? Was he on with you guys?
Yeah. Because
okay, I'll go look it
Debra's
up.
become our producer. So look it up.
Yay.
His name is Joel. What is Joel's last name? Joel? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. It was a couple weeks ago.
I know, me too. I'm such a bad producer.
I'm such a bad person's name.
Everybody I've talked to is having brain fog, so don't feel bad. It's just stuff
Joel
stress
Hodroff. Hodroff.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up. That's great. Well, yeah, there's a lot of us who are, social currency is elevated in a basic income type of thing because not everything's about money, and we also need social inheritance. We need that we all from the fact that our forefathers worked and even that we did. We don't benefit from that social stuff. It's been turned over to the rich are benefiting from what everyone else built. The point, in fact, is that we paid to build all the roads that the UPS truck is going over, giving us our, stuff from Amazon. And Jeff, all three of us pay more taxes, even just one of us, than he does because he's, got lawyers and does and all that. That's just a little maddening. And we pay for that. We paid for those roads and stuff. And so we need to be benefiting. And Andrew Yang pointed out that companies now in the high tech use our data, but we don't get any kind of. They use our data, but we don't get any benefit from it. So that's one of the areas he thinks we can have, the wealth.
Okay, well, we got to wrap up. We're going off air here, but we're going to come back again next week with me and Karen and Debra, and maybe we'll have a guest down again. We'll see what we can do. But thank you so much for coming, ladies, and thank you, listeners. And we'll syndicate this out far and wide. And much love and blessings and aloha.
Bye.
Bye.
There's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion, too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us. And now